I'm Joe Kunzler. I'm a big I'm a political junkie. I'm transit advocate, aviation photographer, photograph transit. Um, you know, trying to sell some of my photos with no luck. Preacher podcaster. Also volunteer with a museum in Northwest Washington on the flight sim. And I'm also had been an open government advocate for the longest time, since 2002. And, some of those worlds, it just started to collide in around 2015, 2016, because my ride to OLF Coopville on Central Whidbey Island was about to go away. And so I started becoming a transit advocate. And then I found out about this transit called Sound Transit and Sound Transit Free. So I decided to speak out in support of it. And then I run into a certain gentleman who you, Jason, had on your show today, named Alex Zimmerman. And with Jewish relatives, I was deeply appalled at his Nazi salutes at public meetings. I consider that behavior many times worse than the middle finger. I tried to reach out to Alex and ask him, why are you doing this? Why are you calling King County Executive Dal Constantine the four-letter N-word? Why are you calling Claudia Badass Uchi, the filthy names? And he would run to Sound Transit security simply because I was asking him why. And anytime I've tried to get into dialogue with him, the Sound Transit security have had to pull us apart. So so you go ahead.
Oh, and you kind of wrote like an ebook about dealing with him.
Yes, it's called Tackling Zimmerman, because I have a love of titles that start with the same letter. I love football. I love using Seahawks analogies when I can. And I wrote this book because I felt that as the years wore on, one of the things in dealing with this guy, one of the things I learned was a lot of these board members are like, the First Amendment to the U.S. Constitution. And that's not exactly correct. The Seattle City Council, for all its spectacular, let's just say, for its unique way of solving problems, the Seattle Council has figured out how to deal with him by banning him twice for a year at a time. And so I didn't just write about my own journey. I wrote about how Council President Lorena Gonzalez and former President Bruce Harrell and Councilmember Mosqueda and the staff worked together to deal with him. And also former Councilmember Tim Burgess. Because, one, I'm deeply hurt as a transit supporter and someone with multiple disabilities that, we have someone who thinks it's okay to show up at a public meeting and give a Nazi salute. It would be one thing if Mr. Zimmerman went to these meetings and said, I think Sound Transit's a waste of money, so I'm going to support Donald Trump and Tim Eyman. I wouldn't waste my time with this guy. I wouldn't fixate on him. I certainly wouldn't take a picture of him holding his silly sign. Okay? That's not my issue. My issue is when someone hurls hate at our friends, our neighbors, the people who serve on these public, governance bodies, and the staff. And I'm like, someone has to stand up and just say, no, never again. We're not going to have our relatives put on freight trucks to Auschwitz or euthanize our disabled people. And that's what I see when I see that Nazi salute. And I wish Alex and I could have had a talk about how if he just leave the Nazi stuff out, I'd leave him alone.
Well, I asked him about why isn't he nicer, but he didn't really want to engage in that. But like you said, I think earlier we don't want to spend too much time talking about Alex Zimmerman, but I would like to ask you, you go to these meetings and stuff. I like asking kind of like naive, open-ended questions. So why are open meetings so important?
Because, one, I think it's important that the public see what our governments are doing. We live in a Republican democracy, small r, small d. That means we elect people to learn about the issues and represent us in the day-to-day operations, because we citizens don't have the time to go to every single meeting. And the second thing about open meetings, which should be in the Public Meetings Act, is the right to public comment, to give public input to things and advocate in a hopefully respectful tone for change. And I think that when you don't have a respectful venue to advocate for positive change, you have people risking spreading COVID during the COVID-19 pandemic and some of the horrible things that have happened, because this is a voice of people who feel that even the most progressive Seattle City Council in history doesn't represent them.
So you've been to a lot of these meetings. Do you have any suggestions for kind of dealing with these kind of disruptive folks? I mean, he's not the only one. There are almost every meeting I've been to, there's almost always someone who's kind of quite disruptive and not really contributing.
Well, Zimmerman's the worst by a light year, maybe 5 light years. But, what I tried to do at one point was stand up and turn my back. And, what I think it finally took was writing this book, and then Sound Transit started getting the pressure to crack down. It helped when, when you start seeing public pressure to deal with the incivility, when you have the Seattle Times tweet out that the public comment is a weekly poop show, you start paying attention. But my general advice is, the first time, walk up to someone and say, hey, that really was uncalled for. These people give a lot of themselves. And the abuse isn't just felt by the electeds, it's felt by the staff. And it's one thing to say something's a bad idea and back it up with facts and information. That's what public comment should be for. What it shouldn't be for is bullying someone and driving him, God forbid, to eating disorder or suicide. And as someone who's dealt with suicide issues over my 38 years, I want to make sure nobody goes down that dark road and needs a major in the Marine Corps to save their lives, which is what it kind of took for me. That's why I stand up this, another reason why I stand for this crap.
So where does that passion for you? You said, you're involved in all these transit issues. Where does that come from? How do you stay motivated for that? And where's that drive coming from?
My drive is mainly I need the public transit to get around. And I feel if I leave the bench, if I, quit the team, so to speak, things aren't going to get done. It's like the whole thing of dealing with Zimmerman that, at Sound Transit, wouldn't get done, wouldn't be anywhere near done if it wasn't for me. At the Seattle Council, I'd say the same about Council President Gonzalez and some of the activists, and you'll read that in Tackling Zimmerman, who applied consistent pressure. But back to public transportation, to me, it's like there's too few of us activists, and there's way too many moneyed interests pulling from the auto industry to Tim Eyman to, anti-tax people who just pull against public transit, and the public transit staff have to be very careful what they say, So this is where guys like I have to step in, because I don't ever again want to be in a situation where I might lose my ride to someplace I value, or someplace where I have a personal connection to because I've stuck up for it in Outlinefield, Coopville, and Whidbey, or a place I enjoy going, which is the Museum of Flight in Seattle, or hopefully one day Sound Transit will have light rail to Payne Field.
So how has this pandemic, all this COVID stuff, affected all these open meetings?
Great question. I appreciate you bringing this up. It is a very important question that matter that I think we need to discuss, and the time to start discussing it is now, because so many of these meetings have gone online. And guess who's not there? Alex. Guess who's more able to moderate and control public comment for civility? Council President Gonzalez and her people. And also Sound Transit's gone to email public comment. And so instead of the usual half a dozen, let's just say regular performers, you have people emailing in comments, and the board gets real facts and information to read, study, and discuss, and not noise. And that's being nice, okay? I'm not going to use profanity in public if I can help it.
Yeah. We've had enough so far.
Yeah, I mean, I swear. I listened to some of Alex's latest performance before I came on, and my jaw hit the floor several times already. But one of the things I think we need to start forcing a discussion on now is if, when, where, and how should these federated boards like Community Transit, Pierce Transit, Skagit Transit, Sound Transit, and Puget Sound Regional Council reopen? I mean, we have to consider not just Alex here. We have to consider the travel time of these board members, some of whom cannot take transit because it just doesn't work. They've got too many responsibilities. So it might be better to have them work from their office or from home, more time with their families, more time to prepare, and less emissions in the air. Another thing to consider is also, at some of these boardrooms, and I don't want to pick on this particular boardroom, but the some of the staff get really defensive. And I believe, as in one time I had this obese female staffer get physically between me and another staffer I wanted to thank for giving me great public record service, absolutely outstanding, but also is the board administrator, so it makes everybody a little off. But so there is a safety aspect that goes beyond Alex, and there's an openness aspect that goes pretty deep. And I just think, and also there's another transit, some of these transits, not Sound Transit, not King County Metro, but there's some transits that have their meetings literally at a bus barn. So you have members of the public go to these meetings and try not get in the right driveway and get in right and not be run over by a bus. So there is a physical safety element that goes well beyond a few trolls.
Have you seen any downside to doing these meetings kind of virtually or online?
The only downside is, you can't walk up and thank someone for their hard work, but I see so many upsides. You don't have to go hours on end for one meeting. Again, it's easy, public comment's more focused, more diverse public comment, because people can just call in from wherever. It's so much safer. And, I just think the benefits outweigh of virtual, for the federated boards at least, is better than the physical. Because, most public libraries, they have free computers with free internet. We've decided rightfully as a society to give kids who need donated laptops, donated laptops. So I just think 2021 is the year to tune up the Public Meetings Act. And I'm in discussions with a state legislator and others about it. I'd rather not name names until they're ready to go public. And I hope that's understandable.
Yeah.
But there is something I want to read into the record if that's okay. It's
sure.
going to take me a minute.
Oh, no, of course.
To
Yeah, go
call up. Hang on.
Mm-hmm.
Come on.
One of the
there we
things
go. I got it.
Yeah.
And it's from the Public Meetings Act. It is the intent of this chapter that their actions be taken openly and that their deliberations be conducted openly. The people of this state do not yield their sovereignty to the agencies which serve them. The people, in delegating authority, do not give their public servants the right to decide what is good for the people to know and what is not good for them to know. The people insist on remaining informed so that they may retain control over the instruments they have created. End quote. I think if you go virtual, that really allows the public to do that and watch at their leisure. And if they want to comment or, they can do so a lot easier. So I think it really gets back to the spirit of the Public Meetings Act.
Mm-hmm.
Don't you?
Yeah. Well, what kind of changes would you like to see?
I'd like to see at a bare minimum the following. As in regards to Alex Zimmerman and some of the other outrageous behavior at public meetings, the Attorney General's office write model rules for regulating public comment. To basically summarize the Supreme Court rulings, help define what disruptive is, and keep everybody safe, whether it's staff, electeds, and the public. Keep everybody safe. The second thing I want is to make all federated boards go online. Puget Sound Regional Council, which also has its own Zimmerman problem, should be one of the, should. And I don't know if I explained this, but federated boards are when you have your city councils from different jurisdictions meet with county council members and, to shared governance of, say, sound transit or regional planning, which is what Puget Sound Regional Council does. But I'd like them to go virtual. That's two. And free is I want it required that before any action item, there is a public comment opportunity. It could be all at the beginning of the meeting, or it could be public comment right before the vote, whatever is, I don't really care, as long as there's a chance for the public to have a say. And the fourth change I would make is that I would consider upping the fines and make it more of a sliding scale, because if it was something malicious, that should be fined more than a accidental boo-boo. Honest people make honest mistakes.
Yeah, especially when they're passionate. Sometimes a normal person might say the wrong thing.
Yeah. And it's another reason why I want these want the model, back to number one, why I want the model rules, because sometimes I do get passionate and I need to know where the line is.
Well, it helps everybody. We've talked a little bit about some of the things not to do based on bad examples. So you've done a lot of these public meetings. What tips would you give to somebody else who, wants to have their voice heard in this way?
Mine would be to write a one-page, double-spaced, saying 12-point font, preferably 14-point font in Word. That gives you 2 minutes. Send written ahead of time if you need more than that. I would really try to keep it focused and on 1 or 2 points at most. I would also make sure that the governing body has jurisdiction, and not try to put on an air show with dramatic maneuvers and afterburner and say, "Oh, you're my favorite transit planner. Oh, you're my favorite council president, Marina Gonzalez." It's one thing to give a quick shout out, but anything beyond that, everybody in the audience is like, is it Valentine's Day or is this a public meeting?
And are there any, so you go to a lot of these transit things, are there any that this may be a strange question, that you enjoy more than others?
I have to say, I've always enjoyed going in front of Skagit Transit, because I grew up there. I can't say I really enjoyed Sound Transit because so much of that air show time was about dealing with Alex pre-COVID. I also, there were times I would show up to Seattle Council just to have fun. Like one time I recommended naming an arena, the M. Marina Gonzalez Arena. And then there is, this time that, I went in front of the council and I tried to get people to talk to each other right before the head tax vote. But, the public speeches, I'm also looking forward to talking to the TransLink Mayors Council tomorrow, the world famous Mayors Council, where all the elected mayors of Metro Vancouver are going to talk about bus lanes. And since I go up there to visit and I have friends who work for TransLink, I'm going to encourage them to build bus lanes because I don't particularly like being stuck in traffic.
So we're almost out of time. Do you have any final thoughts for our listeners?
My closing thoughts of Seattle are just pay attention to what's going on. I would tell Mayor Durkin drop her subpoena on the press, and if she can't do that, she needs to go. This is putting a huge target on the back of everyone with a camera. I'm a hobbyist photographer, and I don't feel safe in Seattle for multiple reasons. And one of them is now, is someone going to think I'm an arm of law enforcement because I show up with a camera trying to get a picture of a sexy Sound Transit light rail train or document my experience as a writer? I want to go watch some planes because I love airplanes. It's scary.
Yeah, we live in strange times.
And I just think, people, thanks, because I really think people need to pay attention. I think people need to participate more in their government. I think people need to demand that there's these virtual options for public comment after we get vaccinated. Hopefully, this winter, and we encourage Public Meetings Act that keeps that. And I think it's a good place to wrap up. What do you think?
Yeah. If people want to learn more about you, where should they go?
Well, I've got a few places. I'm Transit Geek Joe on Twitter, App Geek Joe on Flickr. There is the book Tackling Zimmerman, which I hope you will put in the description.
I will.
Thanks, because I'm going to keep the book on discount until the end of August at least, because right now it's $2.99, but once we get into September, I want to raise the price. And I want everyone to go Kindle because I intend to update the book with developments. I've got a huge wad of public records coming in end of August from the governor's office and others. And I got to decide, do I update the book or write a new one? Or how much of an update I put in and then write a new one. So if you go Kindle, you get the update for free. You don't have to spend a ton of money on killing a tree.
Well, thank you so much for your time. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I look forward to you posting the interview after the primary.
You've been listening to Talk to Seattle, and I've been your host, Jason Rigdon. If you liked this episode, would you please share it on social media? Most podcast clients have a little share button. Click that and tell people why they should listen. If you want to support Talk to Seattle, would you please give the show a rating and review on iTunes? It really helps new people discover the show, and it makes me happy. Follow Talk to Seattle on Twitter at Talk to Seattle, and email any questions, comments, or suggestions to jasonrigdon@gmail.com. Thank you so much for listening.